Okay. Hey, folks. It is September the 9th, and we are going over chapter 18 today on the development of early Christianity. So we had the following terms up on the board. We have clergy, the 5 patriarchs, orthodoxy, holidays, and the arts. So we are, of course, going to talk about other things than that. But first off, let's go over the images I have for the day. So if you recall, in 325, you have the Council of Nicaea. This is important because before this time, Christianity had been criminalized throughout the Roman Empire. Because it was criminalized, it was largely underground, and Christians had a difficult time networking with each other and making sure that everyone was on the same page on things such as what books were and were not in the Bible, what beliefs were, in fact, do they believe came from Jesus, and which ones they believe didn't, things like that. So we're on different pages. But there were a lot of similarities, right? There were a lot of similarities, which goes to show just how strong it was as an underground movement. When Constantine the Great becomes Roman emperor, he's going to reunite Rome. And though he doesn't convert to Christianity totally until on his deathbed, he is going to legalize it and be a big patron of it. And one of the things he's going to do is he's going to call in Christian scholars from across the empire for this great council at 325 and have them hammer out what exactly do Christians agree on that they believe. And so when they're there, they're going to make up something called the Nicene Creed, in which most Christians are going to agree on certain things like what is the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, what's the nature of Jesus. They agree that he is both man and God, which is going to be an outspoken defiance against another heretical form of Christianity at this time called Arianism, in which they believe that Jesus was a man, more or less a prophet, and they had some other things that they believed that were kind of like outside of the Bible. So they're going to denounce them, and you're going to have the rise of standard organization, such as bishops and priests and stuff like that. And they're going to kind of do some things like that. So here's another picture of it. And the guy in the middle there is supposed to be Constantine. I don't know who that is. Here you got, I'm assuming these are all bishops who are kind of like, think of them kind of like they're the head of areas called dioceses, which could be as large as a county or as large as a state in modern terms.
What's the guy laying down there?
I don't know. I was kind of wondering.
He's like,
I can't read this, it's, I mean, like, it's all Greek. So
he's the sacrifice.
No, he didn't do human sacrifices. So the term patriarch isn't used that much anymore throughout most Christianity. But a patriarch used to be somebody who was, like I told you, the bishop was in charge of a diocese. Well, a patriarch could be in charge of many countries at once. And so you had the one in Rome, who was the Pope. You had the Patriarch of Constantinople, who's eventually also going to be the Patriarch over Russia and stuff like that. You have the Patriarch of Antioch and of Jerusalem, and they're largely going to be overrun eventually by the Muslims, as is the Patriarch in Alexandria. Though some of these churches are going to survive all the way up till now, such as in Egypt over there, Alexandria, it's going to be called the Coptic Church, and are still around today, though they have been persecuted pretty heavily throughout different periods. And of course, Antioch is going to eventually branch out to what we call the Syriac Church, but they're actually largely, they've almost been annihilated by ISIS. So they survived about 2,000 years, and so on and so forth. So They all recognize each other, and one thing that makes them unique is that back then, churches thought about, and some churches still do this today, such as Catholics and Orthodox, believe that their authority is inherited like a king from an apostle, right? So like Rome, the Pope says he inherited his authority from Peter and Paul. I think Constantinople's Andrew, and I don't remember what the others are, right? So they all got like their old of the 12 apostles, of course, excluding Judas. All right, so beep. That's all I got for images today. I'll talk about the other ones later. So we have our terms up here. We have clergy, 5 patriarchs, orthodoxy, holidays, and the arts. So, Hunter Ward. Hey, you remember anything about clergy? How were they divided up way back when before you were?
I remember there's deacons, there's bishops. I can't remember.
Yeah. And so you had deacons who were kind of like the guys on the ground level, right? They're the ones who deal the most with helping out the congregations. And then you had the priest, and the priest did most of the teaching, and they also held services, which was called Mass. And above him, you had the bishop. And so the bishop did the same thing as the priest, but he also had kind of like a role in like leadership, almost like a government figure, because they had to make sure that the churches stayed open and stuff like that. And the charity was going where it should go. And sometimes they had to deal with politicians. And then above that, who did I say was the biggest big back then? We don't really have too many of those anymore. Patriarch. Yeah, not patriarchy. That's like and patriarchs. Which basically just means like the head father, right? So they had all this. So this is how they were structured, and they're structured in a very Roman way in how they kind of followed orders and stuff like that. And so, how did they dress? Where did they get their clothing from?
They had robes.
Robes, but the robes were supposed to be based kind of on, yeah. So over time, their clothing came from the Romans, and like I said, Christianity is going to become very. It's going to take on a lot of we're going to see this time again. It's going to take on the trappings of the place it spreads to. Whenever we talk about how Christianity spreads into like Celtic areas, we're going to talk about how they're going to start taking on some of the Celtic traditions and stuff like that and Christianize them. So from the Romans, like here's an example. The Pope wears that pointy hat called a mitre. That actually first came from Roman priest before Christianity. And, they call him Pontifex Maximus. That means the great bridge builder. You probably don't remember, like a year ago, we were talking about back when Rome still had kings. That's what they used to call their priest, was the bridge builders. So they kind of kept that. So they keep a lot of these things from the areas they spread to. Okay, so here were the 5 patriarchs. What were they over?
Everyone.
Which one?
That one.
Huh?
We had one in Rome.
Rome, yeah. So we're gonna call them the head leaders of the church. And remember back then, the churches weren't very They didn't handle a lot of secular things. They did only religious stuff and charity. That was about it. So we're not talking about the period like when we start talking about the late Middle Ages and Renaissance, where you have bishops and popes leading armies and stuff like that. So we're not talking about that stuff right now. So we had one in Rome, right? And where was another one? Constantinople. And a lot of churches, a lot of different denominations have deacons and bishops, and some have priests. And in the East, like in Russia and Greece, they still have patriarchs and stuff like that. Hey, so where did another patriarch like stay at? Jerusalem. Yeah, I mean that makes sense because it's kind of like very well known for Christians, Jews, and eventually Muslims. Hey, what's another one? Antioch in Syria. Hey, what did you say, Ariel? Did you say Alexandria? Oh, you said that. Okay. One of the many Alexandrias. If there's one thing you remember, when Alexander the Great went on conquest, he would found cities, and he named them all Alexandria. So that was like one of like 20 Alexandrias. But it's the one that stuck around. It's the big one. So very good. So yeah, you had you're starting to see it get very structured. It goes from being an underground thing where people are holding services in their basements, where they're being very secretive because they don't want to get executed. But people, when they do get captured, they would get fed to the lions. And really, the Romans didn't know what to make of it because they faced it without fear. They're like, what's wrong with these people? And then eventually the war on them, and they started saying maybe they're not so crazy. And so Romans start Christianizing, and then they get legal. So orthodoxy. What did I say was the name of that thing where they kind of come up with what they believe is right? Established in what happened in 325 AD? Yeah, the Council of Nicaea. So, and during this time, they're going to agree on. Dang, I spelled that right. They're going to agree on what books should and should not be in the Bible. There was actually a lot of letters, like epistles and stuff, that they're going to say, hey, wait a second, that isn't true. So they would agree to keep it out of the Bible and stuff like that. And we call these apocryphal writings. So they're writings that some people thought should be part of scriptures, but eventually people decided they were forgeries, or they came up later, or had things that were completely different from the standard parts of the Bible. So they're going to decide what should be in and what shouldn't be in it. So see, we'll agree on scriptures. What's orthodoxy mean? Anybody know? Orthodoxy basically just means standard belief. That's just like if you're part of a church, every church has their own beliefs on, essentially on how your church is supposed to conduct itself and what it's supposed to believe in your heart and all these other things, matters of salvation, and stuff like that. So they're going to start making more normalized orthodoxy across the different churches. So we'll agree on scriptures. And anything else? No? Okay, we'll just end there. Oh, wait, one more thing. And denounce Arianism. So And one thing about this, Arianism not only denied the divinity of Christ, which the people in the Nicene Council disagreed with severely, but also Arianism was the church of the Germanic barbarians, the invaders. So they had a lot of reasons to say, you guys, we don't like you very much. All right. So believe it or not, holidays. What day is going to become a holy day for Christians?
Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. I mean, so Sunday is recognized as the Christian Sabbath. I'm going to spell it. Boop. Okay. But also we have other days that Christians are going to celebrate as well. Like, what's one of them? Easter. Now, they don't call it Easter back then. Yeah. So like where we get Paschal, all right? Like what's the word I'm thinking of? Or like it has to do with like lambs or sheep, something like that. So we get which is Easter. So what's another one? So we get White Sunday, Sunday. What day was that? Which one? Pentecost. Yeah, so Pentecost. So that's when they say the Holy Spirit came and the church on earth was blessed. What's another one? Christmas. Hey! Everybody likes Christmas. Christmas, which is supposed to signify the birth of Christ. Anything else? The what? Epiphany. Yeah, Epiphany. So that's supposed to be, isn't that when Mary said that she'd bear the Messiah, right? Is that the right one? Oh, it's when he's baptized. My bad. Oops. Okay. Okay, so that's when John the Baptist baptizes Jesus. Okay, so they have these holidays, and so they're accepting them, and they're casting out the old Roman holidays like the Feast of Jupiter and Saturn and stuff like that. But of course, they have holidays, but they also have days of like fasting, where they remember their own mortality, like the ancient Christian saying, "Memento mori," remember your death, because the world passes before you. So, all right. So the arts. What all happened with the arts? It was mostly based on what? It was based on two things put together. It was based on this and this, right? So, got it. So, arts. Based on Christianity with Roman influences. So, what does that mean? What it means is So it means is things like this, like early churches, when they start building them in Italy and places like that, they're actually going to look a lot like a Roman villa, but they're going to change the Roman villa into the shape of a cross. So the buildings are going to be like the shape of a cross, but they're going to look like a Roman farm villa, right? The artwork is going to be Roman-looking mosaics, but instead of being about things like fawns or satyrs or people hunting deer or something like that, it's going to be like scenes out of the Bible or depictions of the end of times or of the Mass or Jesus' teachings or something like that. So it's going to be based on Christianity with Roman influences. And the same goes for however, some things, however, they're going to keep, and they're actually going to strongly be influenced by by the Jewish Sabbath. Like the way they would conduct services is they'll have like psalm readings and people repeat it back to them, kind of like they do in the Jewish service. They're going to have incense and things like that, kind of like the Jewish services like to do and stuff. So the way that they went up to the altar was kind of supposed to kind of signify kind of like sacrifice of a lamb, things like that. So it was like all this stuff mixed together. So it was like Christianity pulled from all these different things to make what you're going to have become the standard throughout the Middle Ages. You're going to start having standard songs and things like that people are going to say. Standard prayers are going to become more popular across Europe. And we'll talk more about that stuff later. Just know religion was everything to the medieval person. Like, they didn't really, like nowadays, people often get worked up about the news and things like that. Back then, people weren't. Your life revolved around your religion, essentially, especially for the poorer classes. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and end the lecture today. It was kind of a short one. When we come back, we're either going to go over the next 2 chapters, which it wouldn't hurt to read about, or we're going to have a primary source we're going to read. I haven't made up my mind yet. I'll see what I can get for you. All right. See y'all next time, kids. And there we have it.